Musings of a Modern Conservative, Short Essays on Various Political Topics, by Thomas Hamilton. Section 3, Musings on Various Modern Political Topics. Essay 15, Separation of Government and State. Musings on Abortion. What is the real question at hand when the concept of abortion is being discussed? Is it really the matter of a woman being allowed to choose what she wants to do with her own body? Is there a purpose in an abortion at all? If there is a purpose in an abortion, what is it? I also wonder, why is there squabbling over certain innate details that surround the entire debate? Clearly, there is no woman that thinks that an abortion ought to be performed. In other words, all children should be loved and planned. On the other end of the debate, no right-minded person would even contemplate arguing the immoralities of an abortion if a doctor said it would save the life of the mother. So what is the real debate between the pro-choice and pro-life crowd? I think that the real question is one of states' rights. I think that the conservatives, who view abortion as a moral crime, would like to make it illegal. I think on the other end, those that view abortion as a painful last-ditch effort think that there should be some way for a woman to have control over their own future. The question is of choice over life, but of a different variety than is commonly played out in the so-called larger media, liberal or conservative. It seems to me of a choice over the ability of a state to make its own decisions. I would like to make a bold and arrogant statement, if my audience would please implore my musings. No one liberal or conservative, pro-choice or pro-life, ever agrees with the concept of an abortion. If this statement is true, then why such a raging debate? In my view, the debate needs to be brought down to the most simplistic of viewpoints, to a place where both pro-life and pro-choice do not like being told they must go. Ask yourself, what does your philosophy, conservative or liberal, tell you? It would seem to me that in the case of pro-choice, that they would more often than not side with the conservative. Why side with the conservative? What are they in fact asking? Are they not asking for unfettered decision-making power? A fetus, under normal circumstances, left alone, would end up growing to maturity, and, more often than not, being born. So isn't a woman really asking to stop the birthing process then? Aren't they asking to be left alone? Aren't they asking to be allowed to make their own decisions? Is this decision somehow more sacred than any other decision? That somehow this one decision should in all cases, and under all circumstances, be left to the decision holder, namely the woman? Is this the one and only one decision a person gets to make without a government telling them no? Even more terrifying, if this is the only decision that should be removed from any and all government intervention, why should it be the one that stops a life from being had? I am not so arrogant to think that a woman takes this decision lightly. By the same token, does that make the decision any more or less morally ambivalent? Why then do so-called pro-choice advocates end up not being pro-choice on far too many other political items? Why do they tend to be liberal in their political thinking? Why, if they are so pro-choice and feel that decisions such as life and death of a fetus ought to be left up to the individual, but every other decision ought to be made for them by some form of government act, is this truly pro-choice? Or is the mantra really just a piece of propaganda of grand proportion? The conservative is seemingly just as guilty as the pro-choice individual in this case, as they blatantly contradict their better senses. Shouldn't it be the conservatives and not the liberals that would advocate for a mother's right to choose what they want to do with their own bodies? Conservatives tend to look towards individual choice in all other things. Why not here? Why is it that when a person who is looking for some freedom of choice, the conservative, turns their back? Is it truly the immorality of an abortion? Does the conservative really have a moral issue with an abortion? Is the life of an unborn child more sacred than the life of someone who is born and living? More importantly, though, is the unborn life of the child more important than the mother's right to choose an abortion? How does the conservative make that decision? If the conservative can make the decision on this one issue, how do they make the determination on other issues? When does the conservative stop making the decisions for the individual? In other words, if the conservative starts down this path, when do they get to say no? When do they get to draw the line in front of others who may not share their view? When does the line between the conservative and the liberal blur? When does the conservative lose themselves in their quest for moral absolutism? And when do they simply become a liberal? Is this the real debate, though? Is the conservative really fighting over government control? Is the liberal really fighting for choice? Isn't the notion on face absurd? If the liberal is not fighting for choice and the conservative is not fighting for government, then what? Although I do concede that there may be a few individuals, far and few in between though they may be, that are fighting over the particulars of abortion. It is just that rare, and to me the real debate never has been, and in my opinion never should be, over abortion. Isn't the real abortion debate over something far more American? Something that has been fought over before? As was stated before, isn't the real debate over states' rights? What states' rights are we fighting for, though? Don't conservatives fight for individuals' rights, though? And the ability for an individual to make their own decisions. What makes this situation different? Why are we being inconsistent in this one instance? The liberal, by contrast, seems to be taking the conservative view, don't they? Are liberals really and truly fighting over unity and morality? The question is again over states' rights. Is the conservative seeking unity or division? Would laws in one state allowing and in one state disallowing abortion divide or unite us? More importantly, though, does the state have an innate right to ban or allow an abortion? In this case, isn't the liberal simply seeking more government control? Aren't they looking towards a one-nation policy that is focusing on the collective as an arbiter of life and death? Isn't the conservative, in this case, making the choice, as painful as it is, to give in to states' rights, even if their moral compass is pointing them in another direction? What then about removing the open abortion policy? What if we allow some states to have abortions and others not to? Although this view may seem simple, I think the question comes down to this. If the states are left to their own devices, how many of them would need to ban abortion? I think that if conservatives truly do not want any abortion, shouldn't they be more concerned over strong values such as labor, community, and morality? Isn't the conservative looking at things backwards then? Shouldn't the conservative look to a society that never needs an abortion? Shouldn't the conservative support responsible childbirth, including contraception, communal responsibilities? Shouldn't the conservative try and tear down laws and restrictions that remove the responsibility and power from good parents and wholesome communities? In other words, if states have to ban abortions, hasn't the society failed? More painfully, though, hasn't the conservative failed to make its community stronger? And hasn't the liberal then won?